I could tell you firsthand, knowing through that. I watched my mom go through menopause. Oddly enough, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting for men who have wives who it might be in your mid 40s or older. You will deal with this one day. So be prepared. I highly suggest for men who are married, if you want to stay alive. But, my oldest son is right now, he's 14, and he's totally the opposite of me. Super emotional, not, just I'm in a free spirit and I'm going to do what I want. He's very much like his mother. Dang, I notice it. He's getting really into like he's an athlete already, but now he's getting really into the diet and he's getting really into the fitness and the exercises and the routines. And it's crazy because I catch him spying on me sometimes, right? If I hadn't made a decision in 2017 to figure my life out and say, I got to be an example for my kids and get in shape and eat right and exercise and do these things. And that was a long time ago. I mean, 2017, that's like what? Almost 10 years ago now, right?
So, the seeds you pour again into your kids right now, some of them may be more expressive in terms of what they're taking in than others, but you'll see the reflection of that, especially as they get older and on their own.
Your kids are growing up in an era today where the world is drastically different from when you and I grew up. And I think we lose touch of that.
We need to hold the president to the highest degree because the president is supposed to represent the entire country, regardless of a political affiliation. Once you become a president, you're not a president of the Republicans or the Democrats. You're the president of the American people. So
that's the problem. What you just said there. That's the problem.
I agree.
Is the president needs to be bipartisan. And
I agree.
And when you become the president,
and so does Congress. Like Congress needs to understand, okay, you understand that there's got to be political maneuvering so you can have control of the House and the Senate. I get that.
Correct.
But when it comes down to issues and voting down the party line it's anti-American to me because we're supposed to be the United States, not the divided states.
I don't think it has anything to do with ethnicity in any of those regards. I think it just has to do with the fact that happens to be the group of people that were committing the fraud.
That's what makes it so easy, Chris.
But I don't care about. But I know you don't. That. I know that goes in and out. To me, what I care about is the systemic pattern you keep seeing, which is money going to fraudulent causes that are supposed to be helping.
I agree.
You see that time and time and time. Look, if this was a private company, Waltz would be fired already. He wouldn't even be allowed to be governed anymore.
Most politicians in their places would have been fired.
100%. So Waltz should have been fired. He's the governor. His job, he's elected to what? Oversee that stuff. That's his job. He's the CEO. He's the executive of that state.
I agree.
Failure.
I think there needs to be more investigation. You raise interest rates when you want to slow down spending, excess spending. You lower interest rates so people can go buy more stuff. You raise tariffs so people domestically are disincentivized to buy stuff from outside of our borders. You lower those tariffs to incentivize money to be spent on imports and exports. And so when you look at tariffs, the main thrust was for tariffs to be increased to keep manufacturing here in the United States. That ship has sailed a long time ago. United States, we control the service industry and we control the technological industry, and China's biting at our kneecaps and at our ankles in that regard. Manufacturing's never going to come back because the infrastructure doesn't have the ability to pay its workers a fair wage.
Because we've allowed tariffs to negatively affect us. Why? By what? Making and giving other countries we've incentivized other countries to take our money by forcing us to buy stuff not made in America. We've incentivized. So it's incentivized the rest of the world to step up and produce these things because it went, oh, great. We can make it cheaper and we can upgrade our currency compared to America. And then all of a sudden, Americans don't want to buy stuff in America anymore because it's cheaper to buy stuff outside the country because the tariffs make it advantageous for other countries like China to do that to America. Right? We've seen that happen over the last 30 years. So your point is correct. As we've seen that happen, Americans have gotten less and less wealthy because our money has left the country and gone to other countries. And everyone wants to sit back and go, all these other countries have done so great. They've done so great on the backs of Americans. They've done so great on the debt that America has. The debt that you see America has, that's not all America's debt. That's the world's debt. We are the reserve currency, after all. You want to know what's interesting? I didn't see very many made in China labels anymore in the same clothes I was buying. Instead, I saw stuff that I saw back in the 2000s. Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Turkey. But if I bought jeans at Walmart at the beginning of the year, they were made in China. If I buy them today, they're made in Bangladesh again. If I go back 40 years ago, they're made in America. So, we've incentivized these other countries to get rich, and now we're paying the price. The debt you see that America has, yes, a lot of it's our debt. But a lot of it's the world's debt. A lot of it's the world's debt. And just to transition again, if we cut everything off today, and I know we're really tight on a global supply chain, and it's going to be rough for America to turn up again because you take long cycles for tariffs and all these things to work. It doesn't happen overnight. America doesn't need any other country. And we proved that before World War II. We proved that after World War II. We proved that before World War II. America has the best military defense. We're surrounded by oceans. We have the Mississippi River up the middle. America doesn't need nobody. Educate people about slavery and how it was in America and how it started and how it ended. We could be investing money in that, but we don't. We don't invest money in that. And that's the thing that, oh my God, as a pragmatic thinker, I go.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Wonders never cease to amaze. Never cease to amaze me with just everything that's going on again today. I think for me, the most hilarious thing right now that I like, and I took a picture of this because I know we talked about it last week, but I took a picture of this because I just thought it was so impactful. I didn't text it to you. I saved it for you on purpose for Monday.
Okay.
Because I saved it for you, but just look at that, right? I mean, look at that, right?
Yeah.
You can't read it, but let me read it for you. It's out of a news magazine called TMZ. He says, this is quote. She was at a menopause event. I didn't know this, but Halle Berry is really big into menopause, like menopause awareness for women and all of this stuff. And I could tell you firsthand, knowing through that, I watched my mom go through menopause. Oddly enough, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting for men who have wives who it might be in your mid 40s or older. You will deal with this one day. So be prepared. I highly suggest for men who are married, if you want to stay alive in your marriage.
That's right.
I read this book. I probably want to say I read this book now a year ago. It's called The Psychology of the Female Brain. And it specifically talks about what happens in a woman's brain and her hormones during menopause. But anyways, I don't want to get sidetracked. It's a very big deal. No one talks about it with women. Doctors don't even talk about it with women. And it's a massive thing. And women go through menopause in their 40s. So I know 2 women that are in my life today that I know that are going through menopause today. And it's massively crazy. And as men, husbands, you have to be ready to understand and how to deal with what might not look like your wife anymore for a short amount of time because absolutely things change significantly. Not talking about that. Halle Berry's highly, involved with that. I guess she's mad because Gavin Newsom has ignored or struck down menopause bills or women's rights bills or something that benefits women several times. And that's why she's so irate. But this is what she said at this recent thing last week. She said, he's not going to be governor forever. And I think he's up for re-election in 2028, right?
His term is done. So
he's done.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's terming out in 2028 elections. Okay. He's not going to be governor forever. And with the way he has overlooked women by devaluing us in midlife, he probably should not be our next president either. That's pretty harsh word. That's some pretty harsh words there. from God bless you, a leading prominent woman who is, I think she's left leaning, right? I mean, I think she is. Most people in Hollywood are.
I would imagine
but to hear
she
it from
is.
somebody like that,
I don't really know her politics, but yeah.
A woman of color who has a voice, who's respectable, saying those things. But anyways, I thought that was probably one of the most wildest things that I've held on to. Besides the boat strikes, that seems to be a little hot. And I know, TPUSA and things like that. But outside of that, Len, anything exciting going on for you? I know Thanksgiving just passed, and we're getting ready for Christmas. Anything exciting going on for you right now?
Well, my son, who I've talked about many times on the podcast, who lives in Brooklyn, is going to be coming out on the 13th. And so he's going to hang out with us until the 7th of January, man. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And I think I've mentioned this before, and I definitely want to go back to the story about Halle Berry and menopause, just because there's so many overlooked health implications. Speaking of two guys on behalf of women, but we're both married to women, so we can definitely talk about that from our perspective. But anyway, my son and I have had a lot of interesting conversations just about business and just next moves in his life and what he's going to do with them. And so it's always very good to be able to have a conversation. He's 26. To go through the fact that, when I used to walk into the house from long days at work, he'd run up to me and, give me a big hug and say, "Daddy." And then there were a number of years where, he was going through his teenage years. So he was establishing his own independence. And plus he's a younger brother. So he was establishing his independence from him. They ended up going to different high schools, and then he went off to college. And then to have a full circle moment where now from time to time, he reaches out to me to ask me life questions, to ask me business questions. And I definitely realized that the relationship and the seeds you pour into your children at an early age make all the difference. So anytime I get a chance to see him and spend some time with him, it's a really cool thing, man. So definitely looking forward to that. But how about you, before we go back to the topic that you brought up in the beginning? What's going on in your life?
I think it's just so many nuggets that you just dropped there when you talk about that, and seeing that is, and hearing you speak about that is forces me rather to have a lot of forethought, because one day, like, you're going to have those types of conversations with your adult children, and to see you having, and knowing you as long, and knowing your kids as long as I've known them, and to seeing how they've grown up, and to see, what they're doing, and to hear from you what they're doing, and to now see you as a father having adult conversations. It must be so, I don't know what that feels like yet, because I haven't crossed that barrier yet, but that must be so cool to be like, damn, man, I'm having adult conversations with my adult kids right now, and they're making it. And that goes back to the point that you just made of the seeds that you planted and how you did that. You're seeing the fruit of that bear now, and how you were present, and how you're present now, and you're able to enjoy that, and you're able to continue to sow that and to continue to harvest it, and to take care of that harvest that you've got with your kids. It's just so empowering, because your job is not done as a parent ever, and you're seeing that right now. And it's not in the things that you think it's gonna be. Yep. You just gotta. And it's funny that you brought this up, because I was this just recently happened, and I think this is big, and it just happens to be go in hand with this. It's just random, but my oldest son is right now, he's 14, and he's totally the opposite of me. Super emotional, not, just, I'm going to free spirit, and I'm going to do what I want. He's very much like his mother. And, immediately, adults, at least for me, it always is, you just want to get in there and like, okay, you want to do this, and you want to do this, and this is how you do this, and you want to do those, you want to give those fatherly like talks and all that stuff. And it's like, damn, dude, it's not being received, because that's not what they need. And sometimes you're forcing it. But then it's the little things that you don't notice. And this is why it's so important. And again, this is all ties in. I'm just sitting here going, man, what a trip, right? How similarly we're thinking. Because I'm like, dang, I notice it. He's getting really into like like he's an athlete already, but now he's getting really into the diet and he's getting really into the fitness and the exercises and the routines. And it's crazy because I catch him spying on me sometimes, right? And I'm like, oh, he's spying. But he's really into it now. What's interesting is when he wants to talk to me about nutrition and fitness, right? And routines. And I see him doing it now. And I'm like going, if I had made a decision in 2017 to figure my life out and say, I got to be an example for my kids and get in shape and eat right and exercise and do these things. And that was a long time ago. I mean, 2017, that's like what? Almost 10 years ago now, right? I'm now seeing the fruits of that discipline because I can't reach my son through the normal traditional of here's business and here's how to do this, here's how to fix things, but I can reach him through that. And we're having a relationship now just through that practice. Because if I was just, if I didn't decide to get that aspect of my life in order and I was just like, man, it is what it is, and I was overweight and I wouldn't have anything to connect with him on right now.
Yeah. And really, truth be told, Chris, he may not even have known that because children are a product of their environment. So had you not made a conscious decision back in 2017 to change your routine and your diet and your habits, it may have not even been something that was important to him because he wouldn't have seen any examples of it. And, to one thing to your point is he's a teenager. So wait till he becomes an adult and the types of conversations you'll have, because what I found is when I was raising my kids during their teenage years, that was kind of a weird time of adjustment because, when they're 0 to like 12 or 13, you can be much more authoritative. Like, look, do this, do that because I said so. Once they start to get into their teens, now you're having conversations with them and you need to rationalize your reasons why and things like that. You still have authority position, but it's different. And so because they're trying to establish that independence, as I mentioned before. And so they're doing more observing than reaching out. Once they become adults, what I found at least is that they go from, especially when they're independent, those lessons that they kind of saw because they are around it, it has a whole new meaning because now they have to apply it to their own lives. So like, for example, during Thanksgiving, my son reached out to my wife and he was asking her about different dishes. And so, she helped him make the sweet potato pie and, the yams and the greens. And, he was asking about all of those things. And before that was never even on his radar. But now that he has to execute on what he experienced before, it's a different learning style. So, the seeds you pour again into your kids right now, some of them may be more expressive in terms of what they're taking in than others, but you'll see the reflection of that, especially as they get older and on their own.
Yeah, I think it's just such a good point. It's such a good point, and it's such an impactful point because a lot of times people say, oh, I can't reach my son, I can't reach my daughter. And it's not so much that you can't, it's that you have to really, as a parent, look at yourself and go, am I creating new pathways and new understandings and new disciplines in my life so that I can be ahead of my kids, so that I can be prepared to anticipate or to be ready for what they may or may not need. Mm-hmm. And I think that to me is very profound because it challenges, at least from what I know and what I experienced from a parenting dynamic, because most people, it's like, oh, you got to figure it out. And that's fine. I understand that. I had to do that, to a lot of degrees and some degrees, some less than others. Mm-hmm. But I don't choose to parent that way. I choose to be, hey, I'm going to support you. And I just don't want to not have a direction to point in or an answer or something if my kid comes asking. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be emotionally unavailable. I don't want to be monetarily unavailable. I don't want to be business wise. I don't want to be unavailable or ignorant when that happens. Mm-hmm. And I think that most people in general take kids off the table. You just stop exercising those skill sets and those abilities. And you think, oh, it's just because everyone chalks it off to age. Oh, I'm old, I can't move anymore. Your body can move the same way it moves now when you're older, as long as you don't have injuries. I mean, obviously things aren't going to be as 100%, but you can maintain 80% of your faculties. There are people, they run marathons till the day they die. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that I think is where you look at your self-development internally as a person and go, dude, am I getting better as a father, am I getting better as a wife? Am I getting better as a husband? Whatever, insert X, right? Am I getting better to be, because your kids are growing up in an era today where the world is drastically different from when you and I grew up. And I think we lose touch of that, right? We lose touch of what the world, just getting out of bed and walking to school or going to school is in general, it's the same, but it's different, man. It is totally different culturally, economically. Everything is different. Now, cell phones didn't exist when you and I walked to school. Think about the pressures of that on a child, right? Likes and dislikes and all of the attention and all the exposure that you get. So you have to adapt. Otherwise, you won't be able to support the children. And I think that's why there's a lot of disconnect today.
I agree. I agree. And I think as our kids get older and as we get older, we also have to understand that we're going to go through changes and we need to be there as much for our kids as possible for as long as possible, and so going back to this story about getting older and Halle Berry and menopause and all of those things, I didn't realize how dramatic of an impact menopause has on women. I was doing some research about it. And one of the things that I realized is that there's like this whole cascading effect just based on hormonal changes. So when you go on menopause, then they lose estrogen. And because they lose estrogen, that creates an increased risk for cardiovascular disease and strokes and all of those things. And so and then also when you start to lose estrogen as a female, you're more prone to metabolic crashes. And then also, when you have metabolic crashes, then what does that lead to? Weight gain. And so what happened is there was a bill that was introduced by Assembly Bill 482, introduced by a person named Bauer Kahar. I might be pronouncing her name incorrectly, but she brought up this bill that talked about Menopause Care Equity Act. And so what she said is, look, as a country, we don't have enough information about how women age. And so this act would suggest that doctors need to get more training on how menopause impacts the body. And then two, that menopause is, under the Affordable Care Act is also insured. So anybody who has menopause, who is going through menopause, should be covered by insurance. And so Gavin Newsom vetoed that. And one of the reasons why he said it is he said, look, there may be some unintended consequences and extra charges for the Affordable Care Act. And so that's the reason why he turned it down. So, I don't blame Halle Berry for being upset, because the way I look at it is there should be more studies that really reveal the impact of that, and more people should be aware, because there are a lot of women who end up having massive mood changes and body changes, and having a wife that has experienced that and who's experiencing that, sometimes it's freezing cold in the house and she's nice and warm and I'm just, my teeth are chattering and all of those things. We like different things, especially sleeping. She likes to sleep cold and I like to sleep warm. But, as a husband who wants to keep his wife happy, I've got to make the adjustments because I'm not feeling what she feels. And so I remember one time I gave her a hug and all of a sudden, her skin starts to get clammy, and I'd never experienced that with her before. And so it was a very weird thing for me to feel physiologically, because before that, I just thought that what they were experiencing was more, not not physical, but more mental. I didn't know that there was an actual physical manifestation of their hotness. And then the other thing, and I'll turn it over to you. We were at church, and I remember, growing up in churches, I went to traditionally predominantly African American churches. So if you go into any black church, black folks will definitely know what I'm talking about. Every female in there has got this fan and she's fanning herself off. I just thought that was something that they just did just because. Now I understand why, because most of the women in church happen to be older and obviously they're impacted by menopause. But I just thought that was like a black ladies church thing, but not knowing now I get it.
It's so true. And here's the thing that I can't help but think that this is what creates so much tension today. And you're absolutely right about the hot flashes and all of those things. And it manifests, for some women, it manifests massively in the physical side. For some women, it manifests massively on the mental side of it. For some, it goes on both. For some, it's mild. It's different. Mm-hmm. But we talk about mental health crises in America a lot, right? We talk about that's the really big issue in America today is the mental health crisis. It's just huge, and it goes across young kids all the way to older kids, right? Even adults. But this is what's got to chafe you. This is what I can't help but end my day and go, this has got to be another reason why people. And it's not just one thing. This is just. Throw this in the basket with a bunch of other things that's just irritating the crap out of people. Because not only is shit so freaking expensive, and in life just again, reading it, the baby boomers, there's fresh Wall Street Journal and The Guardian, both today, fresh stuff all about the resentment towards that generation again. Right. And I know it just never stops, Len. And I didn't even want to bring it up, but it just never stops. It doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. But here's the thing that just has got to chafe people. And again, that's just one of them added on to everything is the fact that you can have a prominent governor like Newsom in a prominent state that has the world's 5th largest economy, because we love to tout that when the talking point suits a good light for us, which it ought to. That's a big accomplishment to know that, hey, a state inside the United States, which is a country, has an economy that's bigger than the majority of countries in the world. That's got to be. But again, when it suits us. So to me, how we can't afford to spend stuff to fix the mental health crisis, which is women suffering by not having enough education and enough therapeutics behind menopause, which is massive. All the women in America have to deal with it. We can't even get behind that cause, but we're going to send 20, 30, 40, 60, 70, 80 million, $100 million overseas to countries so they can understand gender reaffirming studies. I can't. And then at the same time, your gas is more expensive, your food's more expensive, your rent's more expensive, and crime sucks. And you don't feel safe. That's just got to chafe people. And that's the part where I'm like, yeah, no wonder Halle Berry said it. Halle Berry said everything that other women wanted to say, but they can't say it because they're too afraid to say it. And they can't say it because they don't have a platform to say it. And she said it for everybody. So now I hope that Halle Berry can then champion that moving forward and really put her money and her action and her prestige and her power where her mouth is and actually champion that cause, because I think she could get a lot of guys. She'd get my vote for something. She'd get a lot of guys behind her that would go, yeah, you know what, Halle Berry, you know what, I'm with you on this. Because I'm a husband that has a wife that's going through menopause. And I'm talking to my really good friend who we do business together and we do a podcast together, who has a wife who's gone through it and is probably coming out of it now, knowing the age where you guys are at. Yeah, Halle Berry, I'm behind you. Can you do what most celebrities don't do and actually really get behind that cause and actually be pragmatic and put that to use? That would be refreshing. That would be refreshing. Look at that. And I don't care about her politics. Don't get into it politically. And she kept it clean. Mm-hmm. Just don't get weird with it and take a stand. Just get behind it. And that's what we need. That's what we need. We really need more of that, because that's unifying for me. I can get behind a cause like that. I can't get behind a cause sending $80 million to Ukraine anymore.
I agree.
And that's another subject. I don't want to get on that. Zelensky's in London now going, who else can feed me now? Dude, the money train is over, bro. Stop the war. These guys could have stopped that war. They could. It's not Trump's fault that war's not over. It's Zelensky's fault that war's not over.
It's not. That's
Putin's fault.
It's Putin's
NATO's fault.
Yes,
But
I think they all have a role. I agree. They all have a role to play in there. No, I think.
Len, if this was a real war, Ukraine would be smashed, dead, and obliterated by now. You're telling me Russia can't obliterate that country right now? You're telling me they can't go in there?
But they don't have any vested interest in obliterating it, because they want it for their own, to re-annex it. And so if they go and blow up all of the national treasures and all of those things, then it's done. But coming back to the domestic front, as it relates to just getting behind the cause.
Thank you for recentering us. Good reset.
It's all good.
Len's like, I got to pull Chris back in here because he's going to get rancid again.
Hey, man, we can, us, man, we could go for hours on this stuff and talk internationally. But I agree with you from the standpoint of getting behind a cause that you believe in, regardless of what it is. Like I look at Halle's message as a platform or a way to apply a concept to say, look, if I am famous and I have influence and there's something that I deeply believe in, I need to sink my teeth in and take that belief and transform it into action. Because if you have one person that champions a cause who has influence, they can influence other people to go and be your mouthpiece and your eyes and your ears to go influence other people. And then as they talk to other people, then it raises awareness. And then as the awareness rises, then what begins to happen is the voice of reason starts to get louder and louder, because you can be very rational in what you say, but if you're the only one saying it, nobody's listening to you. But you can't ignore 10,000 versus 100,000 versus 1,000,000 people who are saying the same thing. And to me, I think this really is also a reflection on what our democracy really should be. It's a series of ideas that get awareness, that turn into law, that becomes a part of legislation, that gets passed because it's the will of the people. And so, as more women and as more husbands or sons that love their mom champion this cause, I think there's, a real reason to go ahead and push this legislative agenda forward. And so I'm definitely for it, man. I think that, especially when you're talking about, the old saying, happy wife, happy life, that there's some truth to that, man, in a big way. And if we disregard what our wives are going through because we just simply don't know, or we just were never taught, or we don't care because it's not on our radar, then that just creates opportunities for more conflict, man. So I'm totally with that. And, if you have something else, man, I definitely want to talk about when we talk about the political process, speaking of which, Mr. Waltz, the Minnesota governor, he's on the hot seat, man. And I know that we've talked a little bit about his politics because he was the vice presidential candidate for Kamala Harris. He's back on the radar, man. And so, out in Minnesota, he's got this whole situation going on with the fraudulent meal claims and all of those things. And so I wanted to, before I chime in, I wanted to get your thoughts about what's going on over there in Minnesota. How do you feel about that? And there's some other topics closely related to that I want to bring up as well.
Again, this just further goes back to what I just said. This is why this is just throw it in the basket, right? Just throw another thing in the basket on why people could be so irate. Again, things are so expensive. I mean, unless Minnesota, let me just stop and back up. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And here's why I'm not surprised.
Tell me.
I'm not surprised because, and I just don't understand why the dirt hasn't come out on Kamala yet. I mean, it will eventually. It will. Everything always comes to the surface. She just must really have I mean, she's not good at a lot of things, and I wouldn't insult anybody. Just she chose to be in the public platform, so she has to receive public criticism. That's the game, right? You wanted to run for president, so you have to be open to criticism. I just don't know how the dirt hasn't come out unless she just has a really good team. And maybe she just doesn't do anything. I mean, maybe she really is just the puppet. But I'm not surprised with Tim Walz. I'm not surprised because every single thing that group, I don't even want to say it's liberals or left-leaning people. It's just a specific group. It's a group of political people like Pelosi, Schumer, all those guys are all in one, those camps. And then there's the Obama camp. It's like, so within the Democratic Party, you have the Obama camp, and then you have the Pelosi, Schumer, Biden. Maybe Biden has his own thing. I don't know. I'm not surprised because every single thing that those people accused, and they're so hot on the campaign trail, right? Of throwing out accusations and how bad of a manager everyone on the opposing side is and how horrible and they're criminals and all this stuff. I am not surprised because they were so outspoken about what other people were doing. And generally, when people are outspoken about what other people are doing that are wrong, that's generally a ruse or a herring to take the attention and the spotlight off of the things that they're doing. And the accused or the guilty always accuse the innocent of their guilty actions. Does that make sense? So
it makes sense. I disagree with your point in this specific instance, but
I am just not surprised. I'm just not surprised because Newsom did the same thing in California. $20 billion vanished. We have no idea. No one's even talking about where's the $20 billion. No one's talking. Look, here's the thing. No one's talking about the wildfires that happened in California anymore. No one's talking about Biden's health anymore. No one's talking about a lot of things that have disappeared from the spotlight anymore. And again, I'm surprised. I don't understand how this is not frontline news. This is the sovereign wealth of the United States of America being vacuumed out in front of our eyes through the guise of political program. And programs that are supposed to do good for people. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why inflation is so hyperinflated. It's not just, yes, it is the markets are imbalanced. Yes, it is interest rates are high. Yes, it is we printed too much money. Those are the obvious things that we keep talking about and we keep putting in front of everybody because those are the things that we've been programmed for so long to go, oh yeah, you're right. Because it makes sense because those are sound economic principles. When there's too much of something, it becomes worth less. When there's less of something, it becomes more. Fiat currencies, in this case, the United States dollar, there's too many of them right now. Prices have been fixed. Money, the carry trade with Japan is over. Those are creating the normal things. But you know what's compounding it? You know what's making it far worse? The United States, I'm convinced, could have handled and could have insulated ourselves from COVID and all the shit that we're going through right now. We could have, because we have so much wealth in this country and we produce so much GDP. The problem is that with those economic stresses that are normally happening with a manipulated Fed system and a carry trade that blew up and a cryptocurrency, world that's changing and all the economic things that are traditionally happening, we could have went through that and still had a mild, it hurts a little bit, but it's exacerbated by the amount of sovereign wealth that has been robbed by political programs that are supposed to go to take care of homelessness in California, $20 billion, and food programs in Minnesota, $1 billion problems. The only reason why I'm convinced it's $1 billion in Minnesota and not $20 billion in California is because the population. It's the same game. It's the same shuffle game being played in every one of these states. And by the way, it's not just Democrats. It's Republicans too. They just do it a little differently. The game's the same though. So when we ask why the everyday middle-class American and everyone else that's out there, even the aspiring elite class, meaning those who make $500,000 or more are struggling, $750,000, $1 million are struggling today. Why? Because we've been robbed for the last 30, 40 years with these political programs. And our money has been gone overseas and to people in this country that don't need to be here, have no business being here. And it's made it difficult for people who aren't citizens of this country to get our sovereign wealth and made it even more difficult for the people who are citizens of this country to receive the sovereign wealth. And that's where where you have people that are in my camp that go, Len, we need to cut these programs, not because we don't believe in them, but because we can't give it away to everyone in the world. Because if the rest of the world migrated to the United States, there would be no more United States, because we can't feed the world. And other countries should not be mad at America. They should be mad at the countries that they came from, because those countries didn't do their job. And that's, I know it's a little bit more of a rant, but I'm not surprised, Len, that Wallace is in this situation. And I'm not surprised because the money went to illegal immigrants. Again, I would be pissed if I'm a Minnesota voter.
All right.
Ooh, I know there's a lot in that, Len, but
let me cook, Chris. Okay.
Cook it up, baby. Because I took my 5 minutes. Cook it up.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay?
I can hear you just fine.
All right, perfect.
I hear you just fine.
Okay, so your rant and your concerns are the same formula that propaganda media uses to infect the people's mind, and your mind has been infected by this propaganda. Let me explain.
I want to hear this because it's a balance sheet. It's money in and money out.
All right.
I want to hear.
Okay. All right. Exactly. Okay. So check this out. So there have been reports that the issue going on in Minnesota is $1 billion, but here are the facts. So far, and the investigation is still ongoing. So far, according to the Star Tribune, there's $152 million of documented fraud. Now, some of the perpetrators, you had the founder of this nonprofit called something about I'll find it, but their meal. Let's see. Let me find it. Sorry.
No, you're good. So, it's obscure because it's money laundering.
Yeah. No. That's funny. Okay, I'll come back to you on the name of the organization.
Either way, it doesn't even matter. It's some scam nonprofit.
Okay. So you said you're gonna let me cook. All right. So
go ahead and cook, baby.
So this nonprofit that was founded, the founder was Amy Bach, and the co-founder is Salim Ahmed. So they were found guilty along with 78 other people on this whole issue with issuing out food during COVID. So what happened is you had all these different organizations. So people who ran grocery stores, people who ran food banks, people who had access to poor people during COVID, they would cook the books as related to, food vouchers that were given out and all of this, these services. And then they would report that to the federal government, and then they would reap the money and pocket a lot of it. One guy in particular, he had to pay back $48 million in restitution because of fraud. Now, all of those things are publicly documented and they're true. And the paper trail of all of that fraud amounts to $152 million, more or less. Okay. So because all of that is true, $152 million is much less than $1 billion. Let's just say it even turns out to be $250 million. That's significantly lower than $1 billion. Now, as you hear me say that, I'm not suggesting that that's okay, because the thing is that the governor of Minnesota should have had processes and systems in place to effectively oversee that. But now, for you, Chris, to talk about Waltz for something that he didn't do specifically, and never bring up your president's name for things that he was directly involved with, that's just not fair, man. Like there's no parallel argument there. So that's one. The other thing is that
I didn't even mention him though. I didn't even mention Trump.
No,
I didn't
I'm
mention
mentioning Trump because you didn't.
Okay,
That's the problem. So
But we're talking about Waltz right now.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Kamala, and then you also brought up Biden, and you talked about his health, and say, why aren't we talking about that? And so
I
my
mentioned that
response,
because
let me cook, Chris. Let me cook, Chris. So you brought up Biden's health, but you didn't once bring up Trump's health and the fact that he just had an MRI that he's not talking about, and there could be some significant health problems.
They released it. The New York Times said they released it, and they said the New York Times called it out. They said you shouldn't have released this false information. The MRI came back clean, non-remarkable.
Okay, but still, all I'm saying is that when we talk about one side, we got to be balanced on our approach. That's the goal that I try to do is, okay, if I'm going to talk, cause I'll speak, candidly and I'll speak, harshly against Kamala when she deserves it. I'm going to throw it out against Trump when he deserves it. So,
let me ask you this.
We got to have it on both sides.
I agree. Let me ask you this though. Trump wasn't directly the president of the United States or in any political position where you saw the fleecing of the country. So that's the distinction I'm making.
Okay,
bring Trump into it,
you can make that argument
is one thing, but
no. What about? Okay, no. You can't say that. Okay. You can't say that because I think there's
where did he sell us out? Where did he sell us out?
There's two different.
Here's what I see.
There's two different approaches. Okay, so here's the thing. I would agree with you that he hasn't committed fraud. I would, in terms of using money from the taxpayers to benefit him, but he's a rich man. There's no reason for him to do that. What he's done is he's used his position and his power and his influence to pocket large sums of money. He sold, I'll go down the laundry list. One, he sold personal items like coins and shoes. Two, he's had different meme coins that he's positioned.
How is that different than Nancy Pelosi insider stock trading and all the insider stock trading that happens?
No. Let me pause you there. I think what she did was worse. Worse because she used her position. That's what I'm saying, man. I'll dish it out on both sides. She used her position to create insider trading, which is explicitly illegal. Like what he's doing is he understands
and capitalist.
He's understanding how to wiggle through the loopholes for personal gains. I just think there's a problem when the president of the United States does that. I just think that a president shouldn't be the person to do that. That's just my thing. Like, I think we should hold the president to a higher degree of accountability, of decorum, of intellect, of strategy, of execution. We need to hold the president to the highest degree because the president is supposed to represent the entire country, regardless of a political affiliation. Once you become a president, you're not a president of the Republicans or the Democrats. You're the president of the American people. So
that's the problem. What you just said there. That's the problem, Len.
I agree.
Is the president needs to be bipartisan. And
I agree.
And when you become the president,
and so does Congress. Like Congress needs to understand, okay, you understand that there's got to be political maneuvering so you can have control of the House and the Senate. I get that.
Correct.
But when it comes down to issues and voting down the party line it's anti-American to me because we're supposed to be the United States, not the divided states. And when I was younger, I definitely had a more polarized perspective. But as I get older, man, I understand the importance because the United States right now is in a very tenuous position in terms of our position in the world. Like other countries, they don't have the same level of respect for the United States. And I believe in large part because the president of the United States distanced himself from the different allies that we've relied on for years and years. And, eventually what that does is it makes people like Putin and people like the president of India get together and coalesce. Imagine if India, China and Russia get together and say, okay, I know they're part of the BRICS nations, but if they decided to get together to economically impact the United States, we'd be in a world of hurt because we really rely on China and to a lesser degree, India on the everyday household goods that are in our place. Now, of course, they would suffer economically as well, but that's not the point. Long term, as America loses its positional power and economic power, military power is always going to be there, but that's not what rules the world. And so when you look at local politicians and you look at governors, I think that Walt's, the degree in which he should be held accountable is not that he was the one that was sleazy and acted with impropriety. I believe the level of accountability he should be culpable of is that he didn't have effective oversight to be able to red flag all of this fraud that was taking place. I definitely hold him to account for that, but I don't impugn his character as a decent human being for what happened. I hold him responsible as a politician and a leader for not having the systems in place, which is really a symptom of the entire political apparatus, because there's all kinds of waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'll end on this point with an analogy. We talked about the fact that we were going to have a discussion about the media and the propaganda that the right and the left play with our emotions, right? Think about it like this. Imagine the issue at hand is pit bull attacks on little children. Okay, so there's probably, let's say there are 100 pit bull attacks on children. Okay, so what begins to happen is the media starts reporting on every single reported pit bull attacks. We now say, you know what? We've got to get rid of those pit bulls because they're a problem. We've demonized pit bulls. Now, every story that the news media told about pit bulls, were they true? Yes, but proportional to the coverage they should have received, should they be demonized for that? The answer to that is no. Very similarly, if you look at the Somali population, there are about 86,000 residents in Minnesota that are from Somalia. And there's one particular place called Wake Park that has about 1 in 5 of their citizens in that enclave that's Somali. Well, if you look at the history of the Italians, of the Irish, and of the Polish, they were demonized early in their experience here in America too. And so if you look at those groups now, in Boston, Irish represents over 20% of the greater metro area of Boston. Italians represent about 15% in Pittsburgh and 12% in Philadelphia. And Polish enclaves represent about 30 to 35%, depending upon the measures, in the Buffalo area. So now you don't hear about any of those groups being demonized and anything like that. But if the news wanted to go in and cherry pick on any one of those groups, they could find story after story after story after story to justify and inflate this level of fear. So when you've got a group of people that's 1% of a population, come on, you cannot tell me that you have to demonize the entire group of people for what's happened, even though all of those things that took place with that fraud, some of them that perpetrated them were Somali. That should not be an impact on the entire population. I'm not buying it. I just think that's wrong.
I don't think it has anything to do with ethnicity in any of those regards. I think it just has to do with the fact that happens to be the group of people that were committing the fraud.
That's what makes it so easy, Chris.
But I don't care about. But
I know you don't.
That.
I know
that goes
you
in
don't.
and out. To me, what I care about is the systemic pattern you keep seeing, which is money going to fraudulent causes that are supposed to be helping.
I agree with that.
You see that time and time and time. Look, if this was a private company, Waltz would be fired already. He wouldn't even be allowed to be governor anymore.
Most politicians in their places would have been fired.
100%. So Waltz should have been fired. He's the governor. His job, he's elected to what? Oversee that stuff. That's his job. He's the CEO. He's the executive of that state.
I agree.
Failure.
I think there needs to be more. I think there needs to be more investigation. I think the issue is that Trump took an opportunity from what happened in DC and those two individuals being shot that we talked about last week, and then this whole fraud to conflate those circumstances and focus on the Somali population, because now there's widespread.
I don't think he's focusing on the Somali.
Okay.
I don't think he's focusing on that. I think it's.
Wait to see the reports come out from the number of people being deported from the Minnesota area. Just wait. Just watch. And then we'll see if you're right or if I'm right, because I like to have these public wagers, because
100%.
we talked about we talked about
shutdown.
Mm-hmm. Now, so we'll see what happens. Okay. And then I want after this, I want to talk about, speaking of being fired, and potentially being fired, I want to talk about Kash Patel after this, but go ahead.
Let's do it. I know he's your friend. You have a vendetta against him for something. By the way, I'd be very transparent. I don't even really know who he is until his name came up. And I know there was a lot of issues. For some reason, the opposing side did not want him to be the director of FBI because they thought he was going to be like this pit bull or something, or this crazy guy. But at any rate, since you brought Trump up with it, the only thing that I will say about Trump is in regards to that is I just consistently see Trump trying to bring wealth back to the country, and I consistently see other politicians trying to have wealth exit the country. So I just look, the Saudis. I
think you can make that argument.
Most will say, the Saudi. Every time Trump brings someone here and there's a deal made, no one wants to talk about the fact that the Saudis are going to invest a shit ton of money in America again. No one wants to talk about that. I'm sure China would like that capital. I'm sure Russia would, and I'm sure India would. I'm sure they would. All those countries that you mentioned, I'm sure they would love that. But Trump has the ability to bring people together to make real solutions work pragmatically and make money. He does. Say what you want to say. He knows. Otherwise, people wouldn't do business with him. He still wouldn't be here surviving today. He was a billionaire before he ran for president. He's a billionaire after he got out of presidency. He's a billionaire back being a president. He'll be a billionaire forever because the guy knows how to bring people together to make things happen. That's just his skill set. Is he a complete crazy guy in a lot of other respects? Yes, we know that. But that's just, at least you know what you're getting. And at least the guy's bringing money time and time again with Japan, with other countries, Korea. Every time this guy brings somebody to America, he's bringing money. He's bringing money back to the sovereign wealth of the United States of America, as it should. It should be that way. If everyone wants things to get cheaper, they ought to do that.
I would agree with that, because I think, because one thing unfortunately is in many media platforms, we try to paint every individual as an either or. He's complex, just like anybody else has layers of good and bad. And so, so when you talk about the fact that, he's looking to make deals now, I think the whole thing with the tariffs, I completely disagree with the way in which he's going about it. I think there's there's a role that tariffs play. I think he overplayed his hand. But to your point about his relationship with the Saudis in terms of bringing, opportunities to America and mutually beneficial relationships with them, I can't deny the fact that he's definitely working those deals, and then also with Ukraine and rare earth minerals and stuff like that. So I have to give credit where credit is due, no doubt about it, because again, I'm not going to paint him as all good or all bad. I just think that so many people paint him in one light or the other, and it's both. That's all I'm saying. Just be balanced.
I hear you. I think Trump's done more for the country, and I could say this confidently. He's done more positive things for this country than Governor Newsom has ever and ever will do.
Well, time will tell.
And he's made more money. He's made more money for the country. So let me wrap it up with this, because I know you want to transition. Look, what do you think about this? What do you think the relationship is with this? Because you brought up the tariffs and you brought up the health thing, about the MRI. Because you had Scott Bessent, which is his secretary, Treasury Secretary, right? Scott Bessett's Treasury. He's big on the tariff plan. He probably is the one who engineered a lot of it. He gets out. He says everything's gonna be great. This guy says everything's gonna be great, and he comes out and he defends and calls out the New York Times for the whole thing, saying Trump released the MRI. What are you guys talking about? And he didn't even bring up Biden stuff. So what do you think? Because I know you disagree with the tariffs. Bessett's a pretty smart guy. He's a pretty smart guy. I mean, he's not wavering from it. In fact, he wants more of it. So I got to kind of lead with that and say the guy's making moves, and things are happening. Things are happening in the right direction, and you see things going in the right way. So before you transition, you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I just kind of keep leaning on that I think he's got the right people there, and I think you're going to see this administration end with a very good success rate. I think that we're not out of the woods yet, by the way. It's going to be very harsh and uncomfortable, but I think you're going to see that end. But I just curious to know what your relationship or what your take is, or what your take is on the relationship with Bessent and Trump, and just where he's at in his position, and then we can transition from there, because I do want to talk about what you just mentioned before, because it's pretty wild.
Yeah. So when you look at Bessett's thoughts and his pushing of tariffs in such an aggressive manner, I think you have to look at what is the impact of those ideas, and what's the purpose of institutionalizing those ideas. So I'm going to take a step back and talk about tariffs from a more broad perspective, because really the whole point of tariffs is it operates in a separate but connected way. It's just like interest rates. Tariffs and interest rates, they should be levers to push and pull to stem humans' reactions to it. So what do I mean by that? You raise interest rates when you want to slow down spending, excess spending. You lower interest rates so people can go buy more stuff. You raise tariffs so people domestically are disincentivized to buy stuff from outside of our borders. You lower those tariffs to incentivize money to be spent on imports and exports. And so when you look at tariffs, the main thrust was for tariffs to be increased to keep manufacturing here in the United States. That ship has sailed a long time ago. United States, we control the service industry and we control the technological industry, and China's biting at our kneecaps and at our ankles in that regard. Manufacturing's never going to come back because the infrastructure doesn't have the ability to pay its workers a fair wage. So we have to have other ways to be able to pay. Now, that brings me to the issue that I have with tariffs, because the lever that tariffs are supposed to control is domestic production, and it's not doing that. What's happening is that the lever that's being manipulated right now as it relates to tariffs is increasing the cost of goods and services coming to America's shores from other countries. So what happens is if country X exports product Y, then there's a cost that middleman has to bear to ship the products over, to get those from the ports over to the stores and into our house. That increase in cost is going to happen in two ways. Either the receiving entity, in this case, the United States, is going to have to pay more to take a lower profit if they don't want to pass on those costs to us as the consumer, or they have to increase their prices. And because they have to increase their prices, that price gets shifted and sifted over to the consumer. And that's the issue I have, Chris, is that the cost of the things we buy is getting more and more and more relative to the income and relative to the level of domestic productivity. And because we're not more productive and we don't have more money compared to more income compared to the increased cost, American citizens are becoming poorer. And that's the issue I have. I'm not affected by it. You're not affected by it because we have enough money to take care of our needs. But the people that are just scraping by, they're the ones that are being hurt by it. That's the issue.
Let me ask you this, because you made a very good point. And I know this is for the past 30, 40 years, or past 30 years, maybe 20, 30 years, what you have just described has been happening. And what's happened is you've seen manufacturing and all these, and R&D and all these different things go away from America, even services, because a lot of people will use call centers in India, call centers in Philippines, so on and so forth, right? And remote working has made that even more relevant. So here's my count. Here's how I'm framing it and I'm looking at it, because I just got to sit and observe it. And I'll tell you a quick story, and then we can transition if you'd like. As this process of tariffs, because we haven't had tariffs in the United States for over 30 years that have positively affected the United States.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, that have positively affected the United States. So as we've allowed this, and this further concretes, I believe, my
Wait, just to jump in real quick. When you say positively affects the United States, what's your definition of that? Like, what do you mean? Do you mean by increasing manufacturing or what?
Right. So what's happened here, what's happened here, and we've talked about this, and we've been seeing this happen since the 90s, maybe even the 80s, is NAFTA, China being in the World Trade Organization. And what you've seen is the advantage for all these other countries. So what's happened here is all these countries, like you said, these countries don't respect America. Why would they respect America? We've allowed them to have their cake and eat it too with us, because we've allowed tariffs to negatively affect us. Why? By what? Making and giving other countries incentivizing. We've incentivized other countries to take our money by forcing us to buy stuff not made in America. We've incentivized. So it's incentivized the rest of the world to step up and produce these things, because it went, oh, great, we can make it cheaper and we can upgrade our currency compared to America. And then all of a sudden, Americans don't want to buy stuff in America anymore because it's cheaper to buy stuff outside the country, because the tariffs make it advantageous for other countries like China to do that to America, right? We've seen that happen over the last 30 years. So your point is correct. As we've seen that happen, Americans have gotten less and less wealthy because our money has left the country and gone to other countries. And everyone wants to sit back and go, all these other countries have done so great. They've done so great on the backs of Americans. They've done so great on the debt that America has. The debt that you see America has, that's not all America's debt. That's the world's debt. We are the reserve currency, after all. That's the world's debt, because we financed the world. All that money that China is getting, that's from us buying their stuff, because we made it easy for the stuff to be made there and leave the country. So now Trump comes in and he's a cowboy and he reverses it and everybody has an issue with it. Let me tell you this. I went clothes shopping at the beginning of the year in Walmart for my kids for some stuff. 90% of everything was made in China, Len. Crazy, right? Not abnormal. Everyone was like, oh, the prices are going to go up. You know what's crazy? The prices went up for a lot of places. Prices didn't go up at Walmart. I just went clothes shopping for my kids before I went to vacation in Louisiana. I went, these are the same prices I was used to paying in 2019, maybe a little bit higher. The normal inflation is adjusted in it. I got out of there buying Levi's, Polo at Walmart. But you want to know what I did? I'm a psycho. I'm a little bit of a psycho. You know this, Len. I look at labels. You want to know what's interesting? I didn't see very many made in China labels anymore in the same clothes I was buying. Instead, I saw stuff that I saw back in the 2000s. Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Turkey. But if I bought jeans at Walmart at the beginning of the year, they were made in China. If I buy them today, they're made in Bangladesh again. If I go back 40 years ago, they're made in America. So we've incentivized these other countries to get rich, and now we're paying the price. The debt you see that America has, yes, a lot of it's our debt. But a lot of it's the world's debt. A lot of it's the world's debt. And just to transition again, if we cut everything off today, and I know we're really tight on a global supply chain, and it's going to be rough for America to turn up again because you take long cycles for tariffs and all these things to work. It doesn't happen overnight. America doesn't need any other country. And we proved that before World War II. We proved that after World War II. We proved that before World War II. America has the best military defense. We're surrounded by oceans. We have the Mississippi River up the middle. America doesn't need nobody. Nobody. And as soon as we figure out how to manufacture in space, and as soon as we figure out how to produce in space and offload into space, into low Earth and high Earth orbit, game over, baby. Game over. And there's a reason why the brains of the world like Musk come to America, because they know countries like China and Russia and all this stuff, the priority is never human civilization. The priority is always those who make and control the gold. China is no different from Pharaoh's economy and Pharaoh's world back in the ancient world. You know, it's the same old thing. It's the same old thing.
All right. So the only point there's a lot that I want to push back on, but that would be another podcast.
Another episode, baby.
No doubt. The one thing though,
we're getting real deep today, though. It's getting real deep today. Yes.
I like it. I think the one thing you really, really need to be careful about is that when you look at World War I, World War II, and the context of that time period versus now, World War I and World War II, you were at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and the United States was on the forefront of that. Not China, not Bangladesh, not India. America was, and England was. And so then you had the increased production of steel. And so then you had the Transcontinental Railroad. You had all the skyscrapers that were being built. So construction was happening everywhere. You had all of the military industrial complex that was happening. So you had all of this labor that was used to fuel the war. So the American economy grew significantly because of war. And so the United States to say
that we didn't cause, though.
That wasn't even my point. I agree with that. I agree with that. But war was definitely an economic boon that we took advantage of. But the point is that over time, because of the globalization, America could not survive just producing its own goods and services and products here. Do we have the natural resources? Yes. We don't have the natural resources available to support 350 million people at scale in the wages we make. So take your example. You have 7 kids. You went to Walmart because economically it makes sense. And so when you looked at the labels, you looked at Bangladesh, you looked at Vietnam, you looked at probably to a lesser extent India, and everything else in there was from China. Imagine if you say, you know what? I'm going to take a stand and I'm only going to buy American. Guess how much the clothing bill would have been? Probably 4x more than what it would have been. Now, for you, Chris, financially, you could decide to take a stand and do that. Imagine somebody else who has 3 kids. There's no way, bro. No way.
My point to that, though, Len, is that how fast Walmart was able to shift from using China to using people that they used to use.
Yes, forever. But they still ultimately didn't say, you know what? With Walmart, we're going all made in America. They're not doing that because they can't.
There was a time when I was a kid where everything in Walmart was made in America. That was Walmart's claim to fame.
Exactly, but it's not that way anymore. It's not that way anymore.
Because we've allowed it to go that way.
It happened because it was financially okay. There's a difference, Chris. There's a difference. Okay, look. Think about human psychology.
Good or bad. We can't be mad at the situation we're in right now because we allowed it to happen because certain people got rich doing it.
You suggest that us allowing it is a bad thing. So let's think about human psychology. I am a blue collar worker. I've got a wife. I've got 2 kids, and I live in a house that, I make $4,000 a month. My house note is $2,000 a month, and my expenses are $1,800. So I've got $200 a month to spare. I've got 2 opportunities. I'm going to go to store X that's all made in America. And I'm going to go to store Y that's stuff made in China, Bangladesh, and all around the world. I can buy the same quality of clothing, but with those clothes that are made internationally, I'm going to pay 1/3 of the price of the clothes that I'm going to pay for the clothes made in America. Out of 100 people, how many people are you thinking are going to go to the clothing store? Naturally, they're not forced. It's a choice. The ones made in America or the ones made globally that are 1/3 of the cost.
Everybody's going to go to the cheaper option, but everybody wants the more expensive option, right? That's just the nature of it, right? Because that becomes pure premium.
So those are 2 different issues, Chris.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem, though. Whether it was made in America or not anymore, we're at a point right now where it's so expensive it doesn't matter where you make it anymore.
Okay, so let me jump in. So imagine, let's go back to that same scenario.
So
a store made in America, clothing made in America, clothing made internationally. So you take that same family. Let's say their income was twice the amount. Let's say 3 times the amount. So if the clothes were 1/3 of the cost, let's just inverse that and say they make 3x the income. So therefore, the cost in both terms are relatively equal. Are you following me? Are you following what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. So you take a family who's making 3 times the income. Now they have a choice to go US made or international made. What do you think they're going to choose? Probably American made.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason why people are ascribing to this global economy is because they need more money in their pocket because they don't make enough. That's a domestic issue, meaning that people don't make a living wage high enough. Now, as a business
how can it be a domestic issue? Yes, it is a domestic issue, but the domestic issue is caused by us outsourcing the labor to a different country and then not reinvesting the profits of that outsource back into America to retrain and recalibrate our workforce or our technology or any of our bases. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And eventually
that's the capitalistic way though, Chris. So you can't say capitalism is a problem, would you?
But I get that, but you can't have that argument either because the system is rigged politically. And what I mean by that, it's not rigged politically, but it's too politically influenced that we can't. you can't ever measure it accurately because you have a Federal Reserve System, and a Federal Reserve System counters the entire premise of a free market system, because you can't have an independent body like that tell you interest rates are this and interest rates are that or not. And that's something we've talked about. Look, if we had a true free market system, the landscape would be vastly different, because the bailouts of 08 wouldn't have happened. The tech bailouts of 2000s wouldn't have happened. But you got to understand, we're at this point right now where we've manipulated so much with this system that no wonder we're in the situation we're in. And everyone wants to look outwardly people here in America want to look outwardly and go, oh my God, everything's so new everywhere else, because we sent all the money there.
Yeah, but it's not because of any wrong. Okay. The people operate based on personal incentives and personal choice.
People are fickle.
But the thing is that even you and I'll go to the dollar store from time to time and go to Walmart just because it's cheaper.
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
So people, and so if you take that argument indirectly, you and I are contributing to the problem, because if all of us that had the financial wherewithal took a stand and said, you know what, we're only buying American cars. You and I both have German cars. You and I have 80% of the products in our house that are made in China. You and I go to places where, the majority of our goods and services are global. That's just a human phenomenon. I believe that if we that had the financial wherewithal held the people in political office accountable, we as the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, would say, look, we are putting our foot down and we want American jobs back here. We want American manufacturing back here, but we also want to make sure that the cost of goods and services aren't such that it breaks us to buy the things that are just regular for us to be able to live. And speaking of holding our politicians into account, you got the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. And
tell me, Len,
yes.
What is going on? Because I don't really know. I mean, I know Kash Patel because I know him, but I have no idea who this guy is, his background, but I know who he is, but I'm not in any camp for Kash Patel. What I will say before you bring that up is that I am in the camp of, I don't want to compare myself to saying that I'm in the camp of the J. Edgar Hoover days, because that was pretty intense. Are you ever been affiliated with a member of the Communist Party? But I think that it was needed at that time, given what was going on.
He wasn't good for black folk, but anyway.
Not at all. But what I am, not at all. But what I am of a fan of is, if you are the FBI director, you better be, like it says, you better be the top cop. You better be the top detective.
And that's the issue.
You better be the top detective. So that's my belief on who the FBI is supposed to be. So, and the FBI is the internal police, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. So you have the FBI, who's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is domestic. Right. You have the CIA, Central Intelligence. That's the global, all the different clandestine operations.
Yes.
So to me, the FBI director should be like a referee in a sporting event. The more you know about them, the worse it is, right? That's the problem. Like, nobody should know who the FBI director is. It's ridiculous. And so one thing that I have a bone to pick with, about him and also Pete Hegseth is that if you look at their resumes, like, you've talked extensively about DEI, right? Well, if you look at Kash Patel's resume and you look at Pete Hegseth's resume relative to the position they have, they are grossly, objectively underqualified to hold those positions. Okay. Now, I believe in giving people a shot if they have potential, they have, above above levels of intelligence and critical thinking skills. And because of that, let's take a chance on the young person because they're a prodigy in terms of how they process information. That's not the case. So I'm not going to talk about Hegseth more since we're talking about Patel specifically.
And to your point on that, we can talk about that later, but I disagree with Hegseth in that I like his background. I like where he's at. And I like that he's not a stodgy, old, bought-in general that has Raytheon and Northrop Grumman in their back pocket, because that's generally what you see as Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War or Department of War, is some bought-in old stodgy like Rumsfeld and all those other nasty guys that are just there because they want to get fat and happy. Hegseth, I agree with it. I know it's Department of War or Secretary of Defense, but I think you get a little bit more of technical proficiency in, I think the weight goes a little bit more on Director of FBI rather than, because that's a cabinet position. And I think he was in the military. He is a veteran. He did have experience. He's a pundit as well. But I don't want to talk about Hegseth. We can talk about him later. Kash Patel, I think there's a higher technical proficiency that needs to exist for that position. I think that's just my perspective.
And he doesn't have that, right? And like for me, I'm very much a proponent of extending opportunities to anyone who is qualified for any position, regardless of any of their, race, ethnicity, gender, religion, blah, 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 blah.
And I think meritocracy, right?
I agree, 100%.
It needs to be meritocracy. Now, like Elon Musk says, we need to have meritocracy.
Yes, and I think that there needs
and there's some nuance to that. There's a little bit of nuance to that. You've got to humans. There's nuance to everything.
You've got to give people equal access, and sometimes that requires a different level of access, but the performance needs to be up to par. So with Kash Patel in particular, one, he does not have the background necessary that's required to be an FBI director. He doesn't have significant law enforcement experience. He doesn't have any of that. And so even his own agent said that he's in over his head. It's very clear. And so when you look at the investigation with Charlie Kirk, he had to be front and center, and he made these early proclamations that the person who committed the crime has been caught. It only took 33 hours. And he had this big rah-rah speech about what's going on. I'll see you in Valhalla, brother. Like, you're the director of the FBI. You shouldn't be front and center. That's one. Another one is when you just look at all of the mishaps that he's done. And the issue that I have is that, like, for example, he would fly in government, like private jets, going from place to place, taking his girlfriend on different venues and all of that stuff. Now, to his defense, as the FBI director, your travel should be in U.S. government private jets, but the use of it and access to it, you should have the freedom to be able to exercise a little bit of humility as it relates to your use of public funds for your private endeavors. He had the SWAT team and different, high level personnel that served as security detail for his girlfriend. So here's my point. I don't want to bash on the guy because I think that a lot of people from, different groups, like he had mentioned something about some holiday that's a Hindu holiday. Bro, that's so insignificant to me. Like, people shouldn't bash him. If he wants to say, whatever the holiday was, God bless him, man. He should be able to express that. Freedom of religion is a big thing. Just because you're not Christian doesn't mean that you got to bash the guy, but the issue that I have with him over all of those things is that the United States needs to have trust in the different internal organizations, in particular the FBI. And what he's doing is he's eroding public trust because he's grandstanding. Like another example was, he was making a public appearance and he needed to have a certain FBI jacket, but the only ones they had available were extra larges. So he took the jacket from somebody else, a medium-sized jacket, and it had the wrong stickers and tags on it. So he had to Velcro a certain the FBI tag onto his jacket so he could look the part. It's little things like that scream insecurity. And the reason why he's insecure is because he knows deep down inside that eventually he's going to be found out that he's a fraud as it relates to that position of authority as the FBI director. Once that happens, I think that it's just a matter of time. My prediction, he's not going to make it through 4 years. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think he's going to make 4 years. Just in watching him and seeing him, and I just don't feel he will make 4 years.
Yeah.
Senate confirmed him. Partisan confirmed him. Bipartisan confirmed him.
How many times has somebody brought that isn't confirmed yet? Kavanaugh.
It's kind of stupid.
Exactly.
I don't have an issue with Kavanaugh. I know we're not talking about Kavanaugh, but I did a lot of research on Kavanaugh. I thought that was horrible what they did with him. The blasphemy stuff.
I agree with that.
Ridiculous.
Same thing with what's her name? Satanji, the Supreme
Santomayor?
No.
Sotomayor?
I know you're talking about. You're talking about Sotomayor. No, the African American Supreme Court justice.
You're talking about Clarence Thomas.
No.
Clarence Thomas?
So it's a lady. Supreme Court Justice Satanji. It's like Satanji. Let me find her name just so.
While you're looking that up with Kash Patel, I don't know enough about him, but
Ketanji Brown. Her name is Ketanji Brown.
Yeah.
The whole thing that she went through and in her process, her confirmation, I think it was atrocious, just like what Kavanaugh went through. And like at the end of the day, I don't think it was
as bad as Kavanaugh, though. I don't think it was as bad as Kavanaugh.
I think that, okay.
You had this guy who was about to get taken down for sexual assault. Like, this guy was getting accused of raping this lady, and it was clearly a
No, that was bad. But the issue that I have just with that whole process, they're all grandstand to assassinate and impugn each person's character, and that's the whole thing. So I know this is a bit of a sidebar, but it all ties back to this one theme, which is we need political reform in all branches of the government, and the legislative, 100%. Executive, and judicial. And we as the American people need to do our part to hold elected officials and appointed officials accountable for their actions and also the level of expertise and background they bring to their position. And so I think,
I agree with you, and I can't say anything more about. I don't agree with those actions, the misuse of public funds, all of that. It's not acceptable. But I will say that if and I don't want to compare, but I'm not as afraid of that as I am, because we've talked about surveillance state, right? We've talked about that in privacy. I'm not as afraid of that as I am afraid of previous FBI directors with the fake dossiers and the fake surveillance and the stuff that they did under other administrations to surveillance private citizens and to create lies.
Allegedly, and because he was brought and he was acquitted,
and how they didn't investigate Hillary. So I'm more afraid of. I think it's all.
I agree. I think it's all. But
it's all in there. It's all in there. It's all in there. Look, you and I could both sit here and go and do the tit for tat thing. Here's at the end of the day, it goes back to it further reinforce what you just said. We need, right? Like Bush Sr., read my lips. Hey, top 10 greatest political self-assassinations of all time. Read my lips. No new
Read
taxes.
my
And then
lips.
a couple days later,
No new-
a couple days later, there's new
Yeah.
taxes. Bro, what are you thinking, dude? That's why you didn't win your re-election. You gave it to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
You gave it to him, right? Like, imagine if Bush Sr. would have
And
been
then his son said, read my lips. There's no nuclear bombs. Like,
yeah, and
no
it's like,
nuclear
bro,
weapons.
are we serious? Are we living in a simulation? Because this is kind of looking too weird here, where all of a sudden Bush Jr. comes in and says, we have weapons of mass destruction, and there aren't any.
Yes, exactly.
Why? Because Dick Cheney needed to get rich, though. That's why there needed to be weapons of mass
Halliburton,
destruction.
man, baby.
Because Dick Cheney was really the president of the United States, not Bush.
Sure.
It was freaking Dick Cheney, because Dick Cheney was chummy with Dad,
Mm-hmm.
and they all needed to get together.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I just wish Trump. I'm not comparing again. I just wish Trump was as patient and as eloquent as Reagan. Because then, if he was, and he was as good of a communicator. Because I'm sorry, guys. In the modern day, the last I got your back, everyday folk, like what you're talking about, the real American spirit, the real American worker, like Blue Dean's, kept his hat, yeehaw, like all of real American families, mom staying at home with the kids, dad going to work. Like, if you want to go back to it, there hasn't been, I'm sorry, guys, modern day. You can't even put Kennedy in there because he's too old now at this point. Well, I don't know. Maybe he was in the 60s, still in there, but I think even above Kennedy, God rest his soul, in both of them. Reagan was the last I'm down for you president. He was. There hasn't been a president that was as down for America, and you could sit and listen to him on both sides of the aisle, bipartisan, communication, wasn't an a-hole, across the aisle, all of it. He had it all. So the president you talk about that you're wanting, Len, and that I want, that was him. That was him. But he got shit done the way Trump gets shit done. But he did it in the way that you want it done. He did it the way you want it done, which is clean, respectable. Like, he went toe to toe with all the aggressors of the world at that time, and he knocked them down.
Yeah.
So he went against Russia, the Berlin Wall, and Gorbachev, tear down that wall. All of those things happened under Reagan. So we don't have a down for you, for the American people, for America president like him. Trump's the closest we got. I know you might argue that, but he's bringing money back to the country.
I mean, Reagan certainly was an excellent communicator. Reagan was definitely a pragmatic leader. He definitely was a statesman. He definitely represented.
He brought California
progress.
to success. He had a track record.
He brought America more to the global stage because of what he did with the Berlin Wall and working with Gorbachev. And he was kind of the one that ushered Russia out of the USSR into different countries and all of those things. But he also had his flaws, with the whole
Iran-Contra
war on drugs and crack, cocaine, getting 100 times but another conversation for another day. I think we'll wrap up on this point, which is this, that we can agree on. Politics, especially American politics, is a nasty cesspool of suspects. And we need to try to find effective ways to identify people who, on principle, will go and represent the people. And I think the prototype of a great American president would be a person who is financially independent, a person who is not able to be bought by political lobbyists, a person who doesn't have dirt on them so they can be blackmailed to do whatever they want to do, and also a person that builds bridges on both sides of the aisles, who has a track record of voting both sides of the issues. If you find that person, I believe that could be the beginning of a resurgence of America, because right now, when you look at the proliferation of AI and the arms race that we're having with China, and then when you look at all of the infighting we have in Congress, we need change, man. And so I'm glad that you and I are able to have conversations like this and disagree and agree on points and converge and diverge and all of those things.
I don't feel any different about you.
I
don't feel any different about you.
Not at all.
In fact, I'm going to get off this podcast right now and I'm going to go eat lunch and dinner and I'm going to go, dang, that was hot. That was hot. I loved it.
Absolutely, man.
But that's what everybody envies, though. And that's what the rest of the world envies. And the rest of the world doesn't understand, Linus, is that's the American culture is, hey, it's like my power mechanics. Did you ever take power mechanics in high school? It's an old class they don't do anymore. They teach you how to work on engines.
I took wood shop and driver's ed.
I did that too. I took wood driver's ed. Remember when they used to teach that in school?
Yeah.
And then again, I don't want to keep getting started because we're over time here and we got to get off. But I don't want to get that started because that's the problem again, though, is we used to pay for driver's ed within the public school system, and that's not there anymore. You have to go out and do it now. You used to go to school and get your driver's ed. I remember my older brother in his 10th, or when he'd be 16, I think he was a sophomore or a freshman or whatever in high school, he went to driver's ed during high school, and they stopped doing that. Band programs, extracurricular. We want to talk about this type of money that could be invested in, and even to bring it up for you, like African American studies and children and Western African American studies, and educate people about slavery and how it was in America and how it started and how it ended. We could be investing money in that, but we don't. We don't invest money in that. And that's the thing that oh my God, as a pragmatic thinker, I go, why are we doing that? But you're absolutely right. It's the ability for us to have a conversation and get off the end of the day with this and just be like, look, this is what it's about. But that's my last point, Len.
Yeah, and it's good that at the end of the day we can disagree and remain friends, and that's really what this country should be all about, more and more. And so, my experience and your experiences are completely different, but we still have very similar values as it relates to family, as it relates to our health, and we just want to connect with more people. So if you liked what we talked about or didn't, definitely send a comment. We want you to like and subscribe and continue to follow our content, because we're going to continue to bring it, and we're going to continue to bring you current events that make you smarter, that make you more informed, and that make you healthier, and hopefully put some money in your pocket when you think about and learn from the principles that we drop along the way. So with that being said, Chris, awesome show. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And until next time, man, it's been nice.
Yes, absolutely. Have a great week and have a great dinner or whatever it is that you're doing tonight.
Thank you, brother.
Take care.
All right.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.